Meeting the future mother-in-law promised be a difficult test, but no one expected such a turn of events. In a luxurious two-story cottage area 450 square meters, the hostess of the house met her daughter-in-law, his son, in a very peculiar way. "That's great. Now there's someone. Clean up. Start with the toilets." Holding out the mop, Uranus, clearly I was counting on obedience, but I was very miscalculated. Hello, dear listeners. Glad welcome you to my channel. I present to you a new interesting history. Enjoy listening. Olesya nervously clutched the strap of her handbag, looking out the car window. The landscape outside the window gradually changed. The city's high-rise buildings gave way, elite cottages surrounded by greenery. Igor, sitting behind the wheel, periodically cast worried glances at her and straightened his tie for the third time. "Are you sure you're ready?" he asked. Stopping at a traffic light. "Mom can be a little peculiar." "Peculiar?" Olesya asked again. "Smile. You've been preparing me for a week now, meeting, as if I were going to an FSB interrogation, and not meet your parents." Igor chuckled vaguely and again straightened his tie. In this formal outfit he looked unusual. Usually I preferred jeans and t-shirts, but today was a special day. Just keep in mind that Mom has strict ideas about what it should be like wife for her son. He sighed, moving on the green light. She was raised in strict traditions. "Don't worry, I'll be polite." Olesya patted him on the shoulder. "I'm a trainer under judo. I can take a hit and control emotions." Igor smiled slightly, but it was clear that the joke didn't relax him too much. "By the way, where does your father work? You talk so little about him." Olesya asked, trying to distract him from nervous thoughts. "He is the owner of a construction company. Currently on a business trip in Siberia launching new project, but promised to return to dinner, and not with Mom, a peculiar couple." Again, this is peculiar, I thought Olesya, but decided not to focus on it. Soon Igor turned onto a wide alley, planted with slender thujas. At the end of the road a two-story building appeared, a mansion with columns and wide panoramic windows. The house looked like an illustration from a magazine. About a luxurious life, big, thorough, inconvenient, perfectly maintained territory. "Impressive," Olesya exhaled. "You're not, did you say you grew up in a palace like this?" Igor shrugged his shoulders as if he was talking about something ordinary. "Just home. Parents built it when I was 12. Before that we lived in an ordinary three-room apartment in center." They drove up to the gate, and Igor pressed the button on the key fob. The massive doors slowly parted sides, letting the car pass area paved with granite tiles in front of the house. "Last chance to change my mind," he joked. "Igor." But there was a hint of nervous notes. "Don't even think about it." Olesya took his hand. "We're just going to meet your mom. What could go wrong?" Igor helped her out of the car. "Olesya and I checked my outfit one last time. Blue sheath dress, low heel shoes, heels. Minimum of jewelry." She spent the whole week thinking about this image, elegant enough, but not pretentious. Looking at the marble steps leading up to front door, she involuntarily remembered my own house, an ordinary Khrushchev-era building on the outskirts the city where she grew up with her mother teacher. The contrast was striking. "Well, shall we go?" Igor offered her his hand and they were together climbed the steps. Before they could ring, the doorbell swung open. An elegant woman stood on the threshold. In a sand-colored silk suit. Her chestnut hair was styled in complex hairstyle. Flawless makeup emphasized the correct facial features. Despite his age, about 50, as Olesya assumed, she looked fabulous. "Igor," she exclaimed, opening hugs to my son. "Finally, I'm tired of waiting." Igor awkwardly hugged his mother, and then took a step back. "Mom, meet this Olesya. Olesya is my mother. Zinaida Borisovna." The woman slowly turned her gaze to Olesya. Her smile froze, and her eyes seemed turned into a scanner, in detail studying every detail of appearance. Girls. Olesya felt like a cow on agricultural exhibition. Very nice, Zinaida Borisovna said in a tone, which did not correspond to her at all words. Come in. She stepped back, letting them pass into a spacious hill. Olesya involuntarily froze, amazed. Interior decoration. High ceilings with stucco, marble floor, elegant furniture that was clearly worth bigger than her mother's entire apartment. Impressive, isn't it? Zinaida noted. Borisovna, noticing Alcée's reaction. My husband and I put a lot of effort into this house. Each detail was selected individually. Very beautiful, she answered sincerely. Olesya. Zinaida Borisovna nodded, as if confirming the obvious. Boris Arkadyevich is late, but asked to start without him, she said. Maybe I'll show you the house for now. Olesya, it will definitely be interesting. Igor threw a warning glance at the girl. Look, but Olesya already nodded in sign consent. With pleasure, she said, though my inner instinct told me that the excursion doesn't promise anything good. They started from the first floor. Zinaida Borisovna walked ahead, pointing regally at objects' environment. This is the guest dining room, she said. Showing a room with a huge table made of dark wood. The service, by the way, is from France, handmade work. Each plate costs as much as a good smartphone. We have to keep a special one. The person who washes all this with an ordinary, you can't trust a housekeeper with such value. Olesya nodded, not knowing what to answer. Zinaida Borisovna meanwhile continued, there's a library here. Some books more than 100 years old, require special care. It has to be dusted every day, otherwise mold may develop. Each room has stories of difficulties. Care of luxury items became all the details. Olesya began to understand what she was getting at. Future mother-in-law, but tried to keep a polite smile. And here is my pride, a collection of antiques vase. Zinaida Borisovna pointed out glass cabinets in one of the living rooms. Some specimens date back to the 10th century. Can you imagine how much work goes into it? Maintaining the correct level humidity. Olesya came closer, looking at the graceful products. Amazing, she admitted honestly. You have excellent taste, Zinaida Borisovna. A slight shadow of satisfaction slid across the woman's face, but quickly disappeared. Igor, my dear, would you bring us some? Olesya, soft drinks? Me, I'm sure you had a long journey. Igor hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave the girl alone with her mother. But Zinaida Borisovna was already pushing him towards the exit. Come on son, you know where everything is. It's worth it, and Olesya and I will talk a little, let's get to know each other better. When Igor reluctantly left, Zinaida Borisovna turned to Olesya. Her smile became even more tense. Tell me about yourself, dear, what your parents are doing this. Mom teaches literature at school, Olesya answered. And I didn't know my father. He left when I was 3 years old. Zinaida Borisovna made a sound similar to simultaneously on sympathy and satisfaction. How sad. A single-parent family. It always leaves its mark. Olesya felt something inside, a wave of irritation rises, but restrained herself. I think the main thing is not the number of parents, and the quality of education, he said calmly. She replied. Of course, of course. Zinaida Borisovna hastily agreed, although her tone suggested otherwise. And what do you do yourself? I am a judo coach at a sports school. Zinaida Borisovna's eyebrows shot up. Judo, what an unusual choice for girls. And how long have you been doing this? Sports. I have a black belt and several prize places at regional competitions. Zinaida Borisovna laughed nervously. How interesting, but you know, in our family women have traditionally been more involved in feminine things. For example, I have dedicated many years to my home and family. Keeping the hearth burning is a great art. She ran her hand over the polished surface of an antique chest of drawers. Such a house requires constant attention and worries. Not everyone can cope. Olesya nodded, deciding not to give in to provocation. Let's continue the tour, she suggested. The house really is impressive, I would like to see more. Zinaida Borisovna is satisfied smiled. Of course, dear, I'll show you the second one. Floor. There are bedrooms and private rooms there. Igor will find us when he's ready. Drinks. They climbed the wide staircase with carved railings. Zinaida Borisovna continued her monologue about the difficulties of maintaining cleanliness in such a large space. There are 5 guest bedrooms in this hallway, each with a private bathroom. Can you imagine how much time it takes? Leaves to keep all this in cleanliness. But we come to you once a week. The husband's important friends are coming, businessmen, politicians. Everything must shine. Do you have a housekeeper? Olesya asked cautiously. There was, Zinaida answered with a sigh. Borisovna, but I had to fire her. Can you imagine, I used regular detergent marble surfaces. Almost ruined the flooring in well, now I have to do everything. Myself. Olesya thought that Zinaida's hands, Borisovna with a perfect manicure at all, do not look like the hands of a woman who spends hours scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets, but remained silent. They looked around the master bedroom. Huge, a room with panoramic windows and king-size bed, private office Boris Arkadyevich with leather chairs and a massive table, Igor's children's room, preserved since adolescence. Igor has always been a neat boy. Zinaida Borisovna said proudly. I taught him to be orderly from an early age. I'm sure he will expect the same from his life partner. She said her last words with special emphasis. Subtext, looking intently at Olesya. The girl held his gaze without blinking. Igor is really very organized, she agreed. It is one of the qualities that I like about him. They went back down to the first floor and walked into the main living room, spacious, a room with high ceilings, soft sofas and a large fireplace at the far walls. And here is my favorite place in the house, said Zinaida Borisovna, pointing at fireplace. A real, working one. Marble was brought from Italy. Can you imagine how much time it takes? Cleaning after each use. Olesya came closer, looking at intricate carvings on the mantelpiece. Amazing work, she admitted honestly. Yes, it cost a fortune. Zinaida Borisovna sighed. But beauty requires sacrifice, just like maintaining this beauty. True. At that moment Olesya noticed how the mother-in-law's expression changed. The smile grew wider, but the eyes remained cold and calculating. Something told her that now the main goal of all this will be her demonstration of luxury. You know, Olesya, I'm so glad that Igor finally found a girlfriend, Zinaida began. Borisovna in a deceptively gentle tone. In recent years I have become so tired of following all of this. And I still have charity evenings, meetings with the wives of her husband's partners, she did dramatic pause. How wonderful it would be if in the house a young, energetic assistant appeared. Zinaida Borisovna meaningfully looked at Olesya. A woman who could share with I care about the house. After all, it's yours too. The future home too, right? Olesya, I felt my muscles tense. What started as a simple acquaintance, gradually turned into an interview for the position of a free housekeeper. Igor and I haven't discussed where we'll be yet. Live after the wedding, she answered cautiously. We have options. Zinaida Borisovna laughed as if I heard a ridiculous joke. What are the options, dear? Apartment in residential area. Why, when here's so much space? Of course, you will live here. Igor, I always dreamed of staying in my parents' house at home, he's just embarrassed to tell you. Olesya had difficulty keeping calm. All her years of training in the gym, where taught to control emotions, even in the most intense fights, now came in handy as never before. I wonder what Igor told me at all different, she said in an even voice. But I think we better discuss this together. With him. Zinaida Borisovna frowned, but quickly restored her smile. Of course, discuss it. I'm sure, he will explain everything. And then she suddenly stepped aside and opened the door of the built-in closet, from where pulled out a mop with a long wooden handle with a pen. Maybe you want to check out home more practically. Olesya looked at the outstretched one in bewilderment. Give her a mop. Sorry, since you are planning to become part of the family, why not start getting used to it? Zinaida Borisovna continued to smile, but there was no longer any hiding in her voice imperious notes. You can start with the anuses. We have 6 of them in the house. They all need help. Regular cleaning. Toilets especially require attention. At that moment Igor appeared in the doorway with a tray on which stood glasses with lemonade. Seeing his mother with a mop in her hands, he froze. On the threshold. His face instantly turned red. To the roots of the hair. Mom, what are you doing? He said hoarsely. Zinaida Borisovna shrugged innocently. Shoulders. I'm just showing Osa how things are with us. Arranged. She should know that her is waiting if you decide to live here. And you, of course, decide where else you can find such conditions. Igor was silent, looking from his mother to Olesya and back. He seemed to want to say something, but he didn't. Can find words. Olesya felt something inside her switched. Her whole childhood was spent in the sports section, all training, all competitions, everything moments when she learned to win, they seemed to be a preparation for this at the very moment. Zinaida Borisovna, seeing the confusion son, smiled triumphantly and again handed the mop to Olesya. That's great. Now there's someone. Clean up. You'll start with the toilets, she said. She said in the confident tone of a person, accustomed to everyone obeying him they like. Olesya turned her gaze to the mop, then on Igor's red face, who, it seemed like it was about to melt from shame, but remained silent. And at that moment she already knew for sure that will do further. Olesya slowly she reached out and took the mop. For a moment in the eyes of Zinaida Borisovna a flash of satisfaction. She clearly thought she had won this one. Silent struggle. Igor stood with his head down shoulders. His tray of drinks slightly trembled in his hands. Something clicked inside Olesya. All those years of training, all the fights, when I had to take instant decisions were now making themselves known. She always knew how to act instinctively, relying on his intuition. And now this intuition told her that she couldn't retreat. It's a lovely mop, she said. Weighing the inventory in his hand disapprovingly. High-quality wood, good hanging. This one can be cleaned and other problems to solve. She smiled, but it was not a smile touched her eyes. Olesya twirled the mop in her hand, as if showing an element of martial art. Zinaida Borisovna stepped back slightly, instinctively sensing a threat. What are you doing? She asked, no longer so confident. Olesya continued to smile, slowly approaching the mother-in-law. I demonstrate that I know how to handle inventory. You wanted to evaluate my skills, Zinaida. Borisovna laughed nervously, but did one more step back. I just suggested you start getting used to the house, like to the future owner. Mistresses? Olesya asked again. Interesting choice of word. Usually the owners they don't clean the toilets for guests. This makes servants, right? Now they were circling the living room like two fencer on the track. Igor finally measured and placed the tray on the nearest table. Mom, stop it, he said, but his voice he sounded uncertain. You promised to be polite. I am polite. Zinaida Borisovna was indignant, but his gaze never left the mop in his hands. Olesya. I'm just explaining the house rules. Each family has its own. Olesya took another step forward. The mop moved smoothly in her hands, like an extension of the body. In my family we have rules, treat people the way you want to be treated, to you, she said calmly. You would like me to meet you in mine house and immediately offered to clean the toilets. Zinaida Borisovna snorted, you even have I don't have my own home. What can you do? Offer my son a rented apartment, the salary of a coach in a rundown place sports schools. Igor tensed and took a step forward. Mom, this is too much. Shut up, Igor, Zinaida Borisovna snapped. You always was too soft. Someone has to think about your future. And this athlete is clearly hunting for your money, or rather, for with our money. Olesya felt herself boiling inside. Anger. She's been through too much, to allow some spoiled, an arrogant woman to humiliate herself. Years of hard training, competitions, victories and defeats taught her one thing. Never let others define your value. At the gym, her trainer always said, in judo is not only about attacking, but also to know when to do it. And now exactly such a moment has arrived. Olesya grabbed the mop more comfortably and with a sharp, practiced movement she struck with a wooden handle on the kneecap Zinaida Borisovna. The blow was accurate and strong enough, to hurt, but not that much, to cause serious injury. Zinaida Borisovna squealed and bent over in half, clutching his knee. What are you doing? What are you doing? She screamed. Igor, she attacked me. But Olesya had already done it. Next step. The second blow, neat and verified, it fit the mother-in-law's elbow, causing her to let out another scream. The third light touch on the shin. And Zinaida Borisovna, having lost her balance, collapsed onto an expensive Persian carpet. Crazy, she moaned, clutching at bruised areas. I'll call the police. This attack. Igor, call immediately. Police. Olesya calmly returned the mop to the wall, leaning it exactly in the place from where Zinaida Borisovna got it. It was not an attack, but self-defense. She said calmly. Any lawyer will confirm that psychological violence is also a form of aggression. You started it. She turned to Igor, who stood frozen with his mouth open, shifting his gaze from the mother to the girl. Thanks for introducing me to the parents, Igor. It was informative. I think it's time for me to go. Olesya headed towards the exit from the living room calmly and with dignity, as if nothing unusual happened. In the hall she picked up her purse and moved towards the front door. Igor. Zinaida Borisovna shouted from the living room. Don't just stand there. Stop her, call her, police. Olesya didn't look back. She knew that leaves this house forever and, perhaps from Igor's life and strange I felt relieved. It's better to know the truth about the man and his family now, than after the wedding. She had already reached the gate when she heard hurried steps behind me. Olesya, wait. Igor caught up with her, he was having a hard time breathing. Please don't leave like this. She turned around. Igor looked confused and at the same time somehow renewed, as if it had been slept with invisible mask. What do you want, Igor? She asked tiredly. I just beat up your mother mop. Shouldn't you be in rage? To her surprise, there was no glint in Igor's eyes. Anger. On the contrary, there was something in them, similar to admiration. You have no idea how long I've been dreaming to see something like this, he said quietly. All my life she has been pushing me, my father, around, everyone around, and no one ever dared to resist her. Olesya looked at him incredulously. Aren't you angry? I'm angry, Igor nodded. But not on you, on myself, for the fact that allowed this to happen, for not warning you what it was like actually meeting my mother. For standing and remaining silent when should have intervened. He ran his hand through his hair, ruffling it. I've dreamed all my life that someone I put her in her place, but I never did it myself decided. Father too. He's leaving for on a business trip, so that I don't have to spend too much time with her cross. And then you show up and in 5 minutes you do what I didn't even dare think about it. Olesya smiled slightly, but still kept her distance. So what now? Your mother probably already calls the police. Igor shook his head. The testament values reputation too much. Imagine the headlines. The wife of a famous businessman got into a fight with son's girlfriend. She would rather die than will allow such a scandal. He took a step closer. Olesya, please, give me I have a chance. I know I was a wimp, but I'll improve, I promise. It's not just about you, she countered. Olesya. Your mother just suggested I should become a housekeeper in her mansion. And apparently you didn't mind. Such a development of events. Raz remained silent. I was shocked, Igor exclaimed. I know, it's not an excuse, but I swear I never thought of you as housekeepers. You and I always discussed what we would do live separately. Olesya crossed her arms breasts, and your mother said that I always dreamed of staying in my parents' house. Igor laughed bitterly. And you believed her, Olesya? I've been dreaming of running away from here since I was 16. Why do you think I rent an apartment? Although there are a lot of free rooms here. I would rather live in a tent than come back under her wing. It sounded sincere. Olesya softened a little. So you're not mad about the mop? Igor suddenly burst out laughing nervously, but sincerely. It was amazing. It's a pity I didn't take a video. It's her first time I met someone in my life who didn't bow before her. He took Olesya by the hands. You know, when I was a child, I had a book of fairy tales. There was a story about a witch, which turned people into slaves. And only he who was not afraid of her could break the spell. It's like you destroyed something today, the spell that hung over me all life. Olesya was still hesitating. Igor, I don't want to be the cause of discord in your family. Maybe we should take pause, think. No, he said firmly. No pauses. I finally saw how my mother treats with people, through the eyes of a stranger, and I'm ashamed. It's a shame that I put up with this for so long, and I used to allow it, but not anymore. He suddenly dropped to one knee. Right there, on the path in front of the house. Olesya, I know that right now is not the best romantic moment, but I love you. And I want to spend my whole life with you. Will you marry me? Olesya looked at him from top to bottom, not I can't believe my ears. Are you crazy? I just beat up your mother. Technically you just showed her how to handle a mop, he chuckled. And maybe that's the best thing anyone could do. I've been doing this for the last 20 years. Olesya couldn't help but smile. There was so much absurdity in this situation. Don't you think that the proposal after this kind of acquaintance with parents is not the best a sound idea? On the contrary, Igor objected, now I am more confident than ever. You are the only one who could resist my mother. You are strong, brave, and you are amazing, and I don't want to lose you. At that moment, a sound came from the house-piercing scream. Igor, immediately come back. This girl broke my knee. Olesya involuntarily winced. Didn't break it, just bruised it, she muttered. I know where and with what force to hit. Igor rose from his knee and pulled her towards him. To myself. I know, and I'm absolutely delighted with it. This. You didn't answer my question. Olesya sighed. This is madness. Do you understand? Your mother will hate me for the rest of his life. She would hate any girl anyway, which I will bring, he shrugged. Igor. At least you gave her real reason, so what about my proposal? Olesya thought for a moment. Everything what happened seemed crazy dream. But at the same time she saw, and there is something new in Igor's eyes, determination, which I hadn't noticed before. Okay, she finally said, but with several conditions. He readily agreed to any. First of all, we live separately. No shared houses with your mother. Igor, he nodded vigorously. I'm already looking for an apartment for us. Or a house, whichever you prefer. Secondly, you learn to stand up for yourself position in front of parents. I won't be swinging the mop all the time, to protect our borders. I promise, he said seriously. Today I understood a lot. And thirdly, Olesya lowered her voice. No rings and official proposals, while all this history will not settle down. Let's just be engaged in our hearts, and we'll put off the official part until better times. Igor smiled. I agree. But I'll still buy the ring. And one day, when you least care about it, do you expect me to give you a real one? Nice offer. Zenaida's voice was heard from the house again. Borisovna, now with notes hysterics. Igor, if you don't come back right now, I'll call my father. Igor rolled his eyes. That's it, he said decisively. Let's get out of here right now. Let's go. Come to my apartment, we'll order pizza and let's forget about this nightmare. What about your mother? She asked doubtfully. Olesya. She really can call police. It won't, Igor said confidently. I know her inside and out. She will scream and threaten, but nothing will happen. Will not take any official action. Too afraid of scandal. Most likely, she will tell everyone that she fell off stairs. He took Olesya by the hand. Well, let's get out of here. She nodded, feeling the tension begins to let go. Let's go. Just let me warn you right away. I will apologize to your mother. And she deserved every blow. I wouldn't ask, Igor said, opening the car door. To be honest, I am even glad that everything turned out this way. It was liberating. As they were leaving the site, Olesya took one last look at mansion. In one of the windows on the second floor I noticed the silhouette of Zinaida Borisovna, watching their departure. Even from a distance it was felt the hatred emanating from this figure. This is not the end, Olesya thought. But strangely enough, this thought didn't frighten her. She always loved a challenge, and this one promised one. Be especially interesting. What are you thinking about? Igor asked. Turning onto the main road. That your mother is not one of those who it gives up easily, Olesya answered honestly. I'm afraid this is just the beginning of the war. Igor smiled, but this time in his smile a new firmness was read. Well, in that case she should remember one thing. Which one? That she declared war on the champion under Yudo. And this time I will fight on the right side. Olesya laughed, and for the first time in it was a day of sincere, light laughter. There were many challenges ahead of them, but for some reason now in this car, leaving from the Lifanovs' house, she felt stronger than ever. A month after a memorable meeting with Igor's parents flew by in a strange, tense silence. Zinaida Borisovna didn't call or write messages and seemed to disappear completely from the life of his son. Igor, several times I tried to contact my father, but he answered briefly, citing being busy and promising to discuss everything later. She hid, Olesya said when they were sitting with Igor in a cafe not far from sports school where she worked, like a predator before the leap. Igor absent-mindedly stirred his coffee. You know, this the longest period when the mother is not controlled my every step, not even I believe it. Enjoy your freedom. Olesya smiled, watching changes that happened to Igor during this month. He seemed to straighten his shoulders and I started speaking more confidently and stopped constantly check your phone while waiting for your mother messages. That's not the word. He took her hand. By the way, I finally arranged to watch that apartments in the center. A realtor will show it to you. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Will you come with me? Olesya nodded. After the mop incident they took decision to speed up cohabitation. Igor, as if freed from the invisible put, actively joined the search for housing. Of course, I just have classes until 5:30. I might be a little late. It's okay, I'll wait. He took a sip. Coffee. I have a feeling that Mom I'm up to something. This silence. It atypical for her. Olesya shrugged. What can she do? I don't have a mop. I'm afraid. She winked, but Igor remained serious. You don't know my mother. She never forgives insults and knows how to wait for the right time moment for revenge. I'm not worried about myself, for you. Give it up. Olesya waved her hand. I've been doing this since I was 7 on the tatami. Your mom is scary, but not scarier than my first coach. She was a scammer. Us through the hip, if we forgot bow before entering the hall. Igor finally smiled, but there was a worried the crease between the eyebrows has not smoothed out. Just be careful, okay? Zinaida Borisovna is not one of those who attacks head-on. Her methods are more sophisticated. Everything will be fine, she said confidently. Olesya. I can handle your mom, and you with an apartment. I can already imagine how we will be to make our own nest without marble toilets and mops. Igor laughed and the conversation turned to more pleasant topics, planning for the future housing, furniture that will be needed by the upcoming weekend they were going to spend it outdoors. However, Igor's premonition turned out to be faithful. Zinaida Borisovna did not forget and did not forgive her humiliation. She was just waiting for the right moment. And it came a week later when Igor and Olesya, inspired by the successful deal apartment, decided to celebrate an event in a restaurant. Olesya was late. The last student on I got a minor injury during training and had to stay late to help with providing first aid. She was in a hurry, dialing Igor on the go. Message when a familiar one noticed silhouette near the sports school. Zinaida Borisovna stood at her black Mercedes, impeccable dressed up, with a signature cold smile on lips. Seeing Olesya, she waved her hand to her. Good evening, dear, she cooed. She, as if nothing had happened between them, no incident. You look tired, it's been a hard day. Olesya stopped at a safe place distance, instinctively taking a stance, which would allow her to quickly react to any aggression. Hello, Zinaida Borisovna. What brings you here? Igor is not here. Oh, I know. The mother-in-law smiled even wider. I came to you, I wanted to talk without witnesses. Olesya looked back. The territory of the sports school already became empty. The last colleagues were leaving. Through another exit. She was left alone with Zinaida Borisovna in the dark yard. I'm in a hurry, said Olesya, pointing to his watch. Igor and I have plans. It'll literally take 5 minutes. Zinaida Borisovna made a gesture towards her car. Maybe we should sit down. It's warmer in the car. I'll stand, thank you, she answered firmly. Olesya. The mother-in-law sighed with mock annoyance. With regret. As you wish. In any case, I came with peace and with a proposal. She opened her purse and took out a receipt. Book. Obviously prepared in advance. Gesture. I watched you and Igor this month and I realized that I underestimated you. Zinaida Borisovna began to fill out the check, without looking at Olesya. You are a smart, strong girl, perhaps even too strong for my son. She tore off the check and handed it to Olesya. It had the amount written on it with 5 zeros. What is this? Olesya didn't do the slightest thing. Movements to take the check. Compensation. Zinaida Borisovna answered calmly. That you leave Igor alone. Agree, this amount exceeds yours annual income several times. You can start a new life, maybe even open your own sports club school. Olesya looked at her mother-in-law, not believing it. To your ears. You offer me money so that I abandoned your son. Zinaida Borisovna shrugged her shoulders with the appearance of discussing the purchase of new one's curtains, and not the fate of your own child. I offer you an opportunity. You are young, beautiful, talented. Why do you need to connect your life with ours? Family. You saw how complicated we are. Relationship. It will never end, Olesya. I will always be a part of Igor's life, and therefore your life. She waved the check. Think about it, with money you can leave and start all over again, a clean slate, no scandals, no beatings with a mop, without this tension. Olesya felt something inside, a wave of anger rises. But years the training was not in vain. She was able to control your emotions. And what does Igor get? She asked. Calmly. You free him too. Zinaida Borisovna laughed shortly with a short laugh. Igor is my son. He will never be free from family. And do you know what the saddest thing is? Deeply inside he himself doesn't want this. He was accustomed to a certain way of life, to comfort, to the fact that my father and we solve his problems. She paused, carefully watching Olesya's reaction. You're not the first girl he's ever had. Brings to get acquainted. And I think not the last one. Igor is an enthusiastic boy. Today he feels like he's in love, but tomorrow he will meet someone else, and that's it, will start over again. Olesya was silent, although every word the mother-in-law hit the mark. Especially a phrase about not the first girl. During the month of her relationship with Igor, she has repeatedly noticed how easily he succumbs to someone else's influence, how often he changes his mind. Even his sudden proposal of marriage and there is no heart after the mop incident, was it just emotional reaction? Zinaida Borisovna, seeing that her words hit the mark, she continued, I don't want war, Olesya. Unlike many, I know how to admit defeat. She was able to resist me, that's worthy respect. But think about the future. Imagine yourself in 5 to 10 years. Constant conflicts, tension, inability to set one's own rules, because in Igor's life there will always be family. She handed over the check again. This isn't a bribe. This is recognition of your victory. You can leave with your head held high and with resources to help you build a new life without us. Olesya finally raised her hand and took the check. Zinaida Borisovna smiled triumphantly, but too early. With one smooth movement Olesya tore it apart, paper into small pieces, and allowed them fall on the asphalt. Tell Boris Arkadyevich that it's better to invest money in charity or in purchasing a new mop. She smiled, seeing her mother-in-law's face distorted with rage. And one more thing. Igor decides for himself who he wants to be with. It's his choice, not yours and not even mine. Zinaida Borisovna straightened up, now not hiding hatred in his gaze. You'll regret this, she muttered. Everything ends the same. Girls come and go, but mother remains forever. Perhaps, Olesya agreed. But do you know what the difference is between you and me? I love Igor for who he is. And you love the image of the son who you yourself created. She turned to leave, but Zinaida Borisovna suddenly grabbed her hand. You don't know what you're getting into, she said with a strange mixture of anger and pity. Our family is not as simple as it seems. Olesya carefully but firmly freed herself from the grip. I can guess, she replied. But it doesn't matter. I chose Igor, not his family. And if he choose me, we can handle everything to the rest. She turned around and walked quickly, headed towards the exit from the school territory. A sharp voice was heard behind me. Zinaida Borisovna. He won't choose, do you hear? In the end, he always returns to the family. Olesya didn't turn around and didn't answer, and I was rushing to meet Igor, but inside she was now filled with anxiety. My mother-in-law's words struck a chord. Perhaps because they had a shared truth. Igor was waiting for her in the restaurant, nervously checking the time on the watch. Seeing Olesya, he beamed and stood up to meet her. I was already starting to worry, he said. Kiss her. Is everything okay? Olesya thought for a moment whether it was worth it talk about meeting his mother, and decided that the truth is better than omissions. I had an interesting meeting near sports schools, she said, sitting down at table. Your mother offered me money so that I left you alone. Igor froze with a glass of wine halfway to mouth. What? Yes. A whole check with 5 zeros. Olesya tried to smile, but it didn't work. Very convincing. I tore it, by the way. I hope you're not in resentment. This could be a good startup capital for our new apartments. Igor put the glass on the table with such force that the wine spilled over the brim. I can't believe it, he muttered. Although no, I can. This, absolutely in her style. What else did she say? Olesya hesitated. Some words of Zinaida Borisovna are all still sounded in her head, giving birth doubts. She mostly threatened me. She said that I regret that you always come back to family and that I'm not the first girl that you bring people to meet. She said the last phrase more quietly, carefully watching Igor's reaction. He became embarrassed and looked away. Technically she's right, he admitted. It's not really the first. There was also Irina. 3 years ago. We dated for almost a year. Olesya nodded, waiting for Igor to continue. Took a deep breath. Mom gave her real hell. Constant calls, interference in our plans, criticism. Once she even accidentally ruined Irina's dress at a family dinner, spilling sauce on it. In the end, Ira couldn't take it anymore and left. And I didn't find the strength to fight for our relationship. He looked up at Olesya. I was different then, weaker, less confident. And, to be honest, I didn't love it that much. Irina, what's your name? Olesya was silent, thinking about what she had heard. The story with Irina confirmed the word Zinaida Borisovna. She really had a huge influence on the life of her son and was not embarrassed by him to use. Why didn't you tell me before? She finally asked. Igor shrugged guiltily. I didn't want you to get into any kind of prearranged mood against Mom. I hope that this time everything will be different. What will they accept you, that Mom has changed, but she didn't change. Olesya finished it for him. And it won't change. No, Igor agreed. But I have changed. Olesya, I swear to you that this time everything will be different. I won't let Mom destroy what we have. He took her hands in his. I know she'll try to set it up against you, your father, other relatives, even our mutual friends. She will take every opportunity to drive a wedge between us. But I'm ready for it. Fight. The question is, are you ready? Olesya thought about it. The upcoming war with Zinaida Borisovna promised to be grueling. This meant constant tension, conflicts, the need to always be on check. Was Igor really worth it all? This? She looked at him, excited, sincere, with anxiety in his eyes, and I suddenly realized that the answer was obvious. I'm ready, she said firmly, but I have one condition. Any, Igor hastily agreed. We set our own boundaries with you. Family. No compromises whatsoever. For the sake of peace in the family. Or do they respect ours? Solutions, or we minimize contacts. I am not going to fight with you all my life. Mother. Igor nodded. Fair enough. I agree. Our lives are ours. Rules. He raised his glass to us and to our new apartment where there will be no room for my mom and her mops. Olesya smiled and clinked glasses with him. Us and for your mother. In the end, if it weren't for her, we wouldn't have understood so quickly how strong our feelings are. They both laughed and the tension began to build. Let go. The dinner continued in a pleasant atmosphere. They discussed plans for the future and dreamed about how the new apartment will be furnished. We were making plans for vacation. But Olesya, I understood that this was just the beginning. Zinaida Borisovna is not one of those who easily retreats. And although today the battle remains theirs, the war was far from over. However, it didn't matter now. Looking at Igor, at how he talks enthusiastically about his ideas for their new home, Olesya felt confidence. Together they can handle anything, even the most powerful and manipulative mother-in-law in the world. The wedding was scheduled for the end of May. A modest ceremony without unnecessary noise. Only close friends and family. Zinaida Borisovna, having received the invitation, reacted predictably. Sent Igor a message about the sudden migraine attack, which, according to forecasts, it should have lasted exactly until the day of the ceremony. She was offended, Igor said, showing Olesya the message. We didn't consult with her about the date, places, guest list, nothing at all, did not consult. And what do you feel? She asked cautiously. Olesya, watching his reaction. Igor thought for a moment, and then smiled unexpectedly. Relief. Can you imagine? If she took on the task of organizing our wedding, it wouldn't be a celebration, but a demonstration. Authorities. Guests, her friends, menu, her choice, place, where she wants to produce impression. He hugged Olesya. And now we will have exactly this, the wedding we want, without pathos and manipulations. The organization of the holiday was in full swing. Olesya chose something simple, it's for you, an elegant dress. Igor ordered a suit. They found a small restaurant with a cozy courtyard, agreed with photographer and put together a menu. A week before the wedding, there was a unexpected call. Olesya, busy trying on a dress, saw there is an unfamiliar number on the phone screen. Hello, Olesya, this is Boris Arkadyevich, my father. Igor. She was momentarily at a loss. After a memorable meeting with my parents, she saw Igor's father only once. Briefly when they stopped by to pick up Igor's documents from his parents' house. Then Boris Arkadyevich held on detachedly, although politely. Hello, Boris Arkadyevich. What obliged? I wanted to talk about the wedding. Yes, opportunity to meet today if you will succeed. Olesya hesitated. On the one hand, the meeting could have turned out to be trap. Perhaps Zinaida Borisovna decided to act through her husband. On the other hand, Boris Arkadyevich always seemed the more adequate of the parents. Igor. Okay, she finally agreed. Badu, where and when? They agreed to meet in a cafe. Not far from his company's office. Olesya arrived earlier and chose a table in corner, from where the whole was clearly visible hall, and ordered tea. Boris Arkadyevich appeared exactly at the appointed time. A tall man in a strict business suit, with bald spots on forehead and an attentive gaze. Igor inherited his father's height and cut eye. Thank you for agreeing to meet, he said, shaking Olesya's hand. Igor doesn't know about this conversation. No, she admitted. She decided first understand for yourself what this is about. Boris Arkadyevich nodded, as if approving. This approach. Reasonable. He made an order to the waiter who came up and turned to Olesya. I won't go around and about. I know that happened when you met Zinaida, and I know about her subsequent attempts to buy you off. Olesya tensed up internally, but kept her cool. Calm facial expression. What do you mean by this, Boris Arkadyevich? That I'm on your side. I just replied. He. And it always has been since the very moment Igor told me about the incident with the mop. Seeing Olesya's surprise, he quietly laughed. Do you know how many years I've been married to Zinaida? 32 years old. And all this time she was in control every aspect of our family life. I allowed it because it was easier. I went to work, on a business trip, ran away, to be honest. Waiter brought coffee, and Boris Arkadyevich did take a sip before continuing. When Igor told you what you did, you know, I burst out laughing. For the first time in many years. Someone finally put Zinaida in her place. It was liberating. Olesya looked at him with distrust. Why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you intervene earlier? Because I wanted to see how close you are with Igor. We're serious, he replied. My wife is a complicated person. She knows how to manipulate, pressure, play on feeling of guilt. I wanted to make sure that you both are ready to confront this. He put the spoon aside and you proved that they are ready, that's why I am here. With what proposal? She asked directly. Olesya. Boris Arkadyevich smiled. I want to pay for your wedding in full. From start to finish as a gift. Olesya shook her head. Thank you, but we will manage on our own. We've got everything covered. It's all organized, all that's left is to pay. Restaurant and I insist. He interrupted her gently but firmly. Boris Arkadyevich. This is not an attempt at control, Olesya. This is my way to show that I support your solution and way to apologize for behavior Zinaida. He took another sip of coffee. Besides, I really want to attend your wedding. And if Zinaida finds out that I paid for the celebration at which she announced a boycott, it will be small and the primer, but a pleasant retribution for years of control. A mischievous glint flashed in his eyes, so similar to the one that sometimes appeared at Igor's. Olesya smiled involuntarily. Are you sure you want to escalate conflict with your wife? Boris Arkadyevich shrugged. You know, at our age you start understand that life is too short to constantly give in. Yes, Zinaida will be furious, but maybe this will make her finally realize that she can't control everything and everyone. He leaned closer. Igor deserves it. Happiness, and you, apparently, do his happy. That's all that matters to me, as for a father. Olesya thought about it. The proposal was tempting, but she couldn't help but see and there's a catch. I need to discuss this with Igor, she finally said. This is our common wedding, and the decision too must be common. Boris Arkadyevich nodded. Of course, I didn't expect any other answer. He took a business card out of his pocket and handed it over Olya. Call me when you decide, without pressure. When Olesya told Igor about the meeting, at first he frowned in disbelief. My father never went against my mother, he said, looking at the business card. This is strange. Maybe he has changed too, just like you. Igor rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Maybe, he's really become one lately, be more interested in my life more often call. And when we met, he asked about you. And in such a way that Mom I haven't heard. After a long discussion they decided accept Boris Arkadyevich's offer, but on the condition that this does not give him the right to interfere with their plans. The wedding remained as they were conceived, modest and cozy. It was just that now my father paid the bills. Igor. The wedding day was sunny and warm. Olesya was nervous not because of the ceremony, but because of possible surprises from Zinaida Borisovna. But everything went smoothly. Boris Arkadyevich he came alone, elegant, in strict clothes suit, with a sincere smile on his face. She knows, Olesya whispered when he congratulated them after the ceremony. Oh, yes, Boris Arkadyevich chuckled. She knows and she's furious. But that's her problem, no, yours. Today is your day. The holiday was a success. To glory. Friends were having fun, toasts were made, and music was played. Music. For the first time in a long time, Olesya felt real happy and protected. When they were already getting ready with Igor to leave, Boris Arkadyevich called them backside. I have one more gift for you, he said, holding out the envelope. Inside were documents for the apartment, the same one that they had with Igor recently bought. What is this? Olesya didn't understand. I registered the apartment completely in your name too, Boris Arkadyevich explained. All payments are made in equal shares, the loan is repaid. Igor looked at his father in shock. But why? Boris Arkadyevich put his hand on his shoulder. Son. Because I want you to have a house that is wholly owned only for you. No obligations, no opportunity manipulation by anyone was. He looked at Olesya. And because I believe that you are exactly the woman who my son needs me. Strong, independent, capable of protecting both herself and him. Olesya didn't know what to say. This gesture meant much more than just financial assistance. It was recognition, support and a kind of apologies for all the years of silence complicity in the tyranny of Zinaida Borisovna. "Thank you," she said simply. And Boris Arkadyevich nodded, understanding. Unspoken words. "Live happily," he said, hugging both of them. "And don't be afraid to install your rules, even if it means conflict with family." After the wedding, the newlyweds moved to their apartment, furnished it in their own way taste and enjoyed the new freedom Genya. Zinaida Borisovna continued them ignore, which, frankly speaking, everyone was happy with it. Boris Arkadyevich, on the contrary, became frequent a guest in their house. It was as if he was making up for lost time. "Missed time with my son, interested in his work, plans, hobbies." 2 years flew by in relative peace and peace of mind. And then Olesya found out that she was pregnant, and then the silence ended. Zinaida Borisovna showed up the very next day after Igor told his father the good news. I called Olesya when she was alone houses. "I heard I'm going to have a grandson," she said without greeting, that, no foreshadowing, nothing good. "Or granddaughter," Olesya answered calmly. We don't know the baby's gender yet. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he is my grandson, and I have the right to participate in his upbringing." Olesya took a deep breath, forcing herself keep calm. "Zinaida Borisovna, let's be honest. You ignored us for 2 years, no congratulated on the wedding, no were interested in our lives, and now suddenly you want to participate in education." "I was offended," she replied coldly. "Mother-in-law. You and Igor didn't show due respect, but a child is a different matter. This is the continuation of our kind, our family. And I won't allow him to raised without my participation." "I'm afraid you have no choice," he said firmly. Said Olesya. "It's up to you to decide who will be. We will participate in raising the child, Igor and I." "We'll see about that," he said threateningly. Zinaida Borisovna said and hung up the phone. In the evening, when Igor returned from work, Olesya told him about her mother's call. He shook his head. "I knew it. She won't leave us alone, especially now that the baby is born." "What are we going to do?" Olesya asked. "I am starving for life." Igor hugged her the same way he always did, "To live your own life, by your own rules and protect our child from any manipulation, even if it comes from grandmothers." In the following months, Zinaida Borisovna made several attempts to return control. She appeared on their doorstep. Apartments with gifts for the future child. Called with useful advice on pregnancy, even tried to contact with Olesya's doctor, introducing herself as her mother, but every time I encountered a solid wall of refusal. Olesya and Igor were adamant. Or Zinaida Borisovna learns to respect them borders, or does not have access to their lives. When little Sophia was born, Zinaida Borisovna took the last step, desperate attempt. She came to the maternity hospital with an armful of gifts and a bouquet of flowers, portraying a caring grandmother. I'm glad," she exclaimed as she entered. "Ward. My first granddaughter." Olesya, tired after giving birth, but happy, held in her arms newborn. Igor sat nearby, not taking his eyes off daughters. Zinaida Borisovna approached bed, holding out his hands. "Give me hold this beauty." Olesya instinctively hugged the child. Closer to himself. Igor stood between his mother and wife. "Mom," he said calmly but firmly. "I'm glad you came, but there are a few rules that we need to discuss." "Rules?" Zinaida Borisovna frowned. "What are you talking about?" "About how they'll build our relationship now that we have daughter," Igor explained. "If you want be a part of her life, and I hope that if you want, you'll have to accept ours conditions." He spoke calmly, without aggression, but with a hardness that was unusual for him. Zinaida Borisovna listened, gradually realizing that the situation has changed irreversible. Her son was no longer the boy he once was, which she could manipulate. "What are the conditions?" she asked. "Finally, giving up." Respect for our decisions as parents. No intervention of education without our request, no gifts that we did not approve, and most importantly, any attempts to turn Sophia against us. Zinaida Borisovna was silent for a long time, digesting what she heard. Then her gaze fell on the child, and something in her face softened. "She looks like you when you were a child," he said quietly. She said to Igor. "The same eyes. And the character, I hope, will also be like father," Olesya added softly. Zinaida Borisovna turned her gaze to daughter-in-law, and a glimmer of joy flashed in her eyes, something resembling respect. "I will try to follow your rules," she finally said. "For Sophia's sake." It was not peace, but rather a truce. But for the beginning, and that was enough. When Sophia turned 1 year old, we had a family celebration. Zinaida Borisovna came with her husband. She held herself tensely, but correctly. She still didn't approve of her son's choice, still thought she knew better, how to raise a granddaughter. But she learned to keep those thoughts at bay. Herself. And Olesya sometimes caught herself thinking that glances meaningfully at the mop in corner when the mother-in-law began to cross borders. And Zinaida Borisovna, noticing these glances, immediately became quieter containment. It was a strange, imperfect world, but he worked. And in the end, didn't he? The main thing in any family is to find a way live together despite differences. When in the evening, having put Sophia to bed, Igor and Olesya settled down on the sofa, and she told him about her observations. "You know, your mom is not here for the first time today, tried to tell me how to hold it baby or what to give her to eat. This is progress." Igor chuckled. "It's all thanks to you and your mop, certainly." Olesya laughed, clinging to her husband. "Who would have thought that an ordinary mop can change the history of an entire family?" "It's not about the mop," Igor objected, kissing her on the top of her head. "The point is who her holds. You changed our family, Al. You taught my father, taught me to be stronger, resist manipulation. And even my mother now knows that there are boundaries, which cannot be crossed. It sounds like I'm some kind of superhero. With a mop instead of a sword," Olesya joked. "Maybe," Igor answered seriously. "Or just that woman who doesn't. I was afraid to stand up for my own advantages and our future." 2 years after birth, Sophia flew by in a relatively calm mode. Zinaida Borisovna endured established boundaries, although at times nature still broke through in the form random comments or unsolicited one's advice. Igor firmly adhered to the chosen line, not allowing mother to manipulate family, and Olesya learned to react to mother-in-law's attacks with humor, not aggression. Little Sophia grew up active, an inquisitive child with character, in which were strangely combined paternal and maternal gentleness, determination. At the age of 2, she already knew how to stand up for herself. Your position, especially when it comes to concern the choice of toys or books for readings. In the summer when Sophia turned 2 half a year, something happened in their lives, unexpected event. Boris Arkadyevich called Igor with request for a meeting. Without Zinaida, only the two of them. The conversation turned out to be difficult. "I've filed for divorce," he told his son, when they settled down in a quiet cafe not far from the company office. After 34 years of marriage, Igor looked at father, not hiding his surprise. "What happened? I thought you and mom got used to each other." Boris Arkadyevich smiled bitterly. "Got used to it, that's a good word. I got used to it. The role of a silent shadow in one's own to my wife. For many years I convinced myself that this was so simpler, calmer, more correct." He took a sip of coffee and then appeared. "Olesya. What does my wife have to do with this?" Igor frowned. "And she showed that it is possible to live differently." Boris Arkadyevich simply answered. "That you cannot be afraid to defend your boundaries. That you can love a person and this is not to allow him to control you." He looked at his son. "Looking at you, I started to think about your life, about how many years were spent on concessions, to compromises that are actually were just a capitulation, and I realized that I don't want to spend the rest of my years like this. Igor nodded slowly, digesting information. And how did Mom take the news? Boris Arkadyevich laughed sadly. What do you think? I didn't believe it at first, decided that I was bluffing. Then there was rage, threats, attempts manipulate. Now heavy artillery, tears, memories of happy years together, pressure through mutual friends. And you? For the first time in 34 years, I feel that I make the decision myself. And this liberates. Igor was silent, thinking about the situation. Have you moved out yet? Yes, I rented an apartment. Near the office. Temporary solution, certainly. And what will happen to the house now? That's part of the problem, Boris sighed. Arkadyevich. By law, our house is joint property. Property, although purchased mainly on my money. Zinaida refuses to sell her share, wants to stay there to live. But I am ready to compromise. Let the house remains for her if she does not to claim the business. He has closely looked at his son. Igor, I wanted to ask you about favor. Talk to your mother. You are the only one, who does she even listen to anymore? What should I tell her? I was confused. Igor, Mom, let your father go in peace. Just explain that this is not a scam should turn into a war, that we can part in a civilized manner, without scandals and legal battles. What's in is this normal at our age? Igor thoughtfully twirled the cup in his hands. Are you sure you've thought this through? A serious step. More than sure, Boris answered firmly. Arkadyevich. I deserve a few years of peace life where I make the decisions myself. If honestly, Zinaida deserves a chance too. Learn to live independently. When Igor returned home and retold talking about Lizia, she didn't look surprised. I had a hunch that this was going to happen, she said, putting Sophia to bed. Boris Arkadyevich has been frequently lately asked me how I managed to hold on you in bridal. At first I thought he was joking, but then I realized that he sincerely admires our relationships. And you didn't tell me anything. And what about me? Should have said. Your father seems to want a divorce. Your mom because of me. Igor shook his head. It's not because of you. It's because of they themselves have 34 years of unhealthy relationships, where one always obeyed, and the other always dominated. Will you talk to her? Olesya asked. I'll try, although I can't imagine how she will react and what can I do to her. Say. The conversation with Zinaida Borisovna turned out to be exactly as heavy as I expected Igor. She met him at her parents' at home, thinner, with red eyes from tears eyes, but still just as powerful. Your father has gone mad, she said. Igor had barely crossed the threshold. 34 years old together, and suddenly divorce. In our age. Igor listened patiently to all the accusations father's address. From a midlife crisis he probably had a young mistress. When the flow of words dried up, he was finally able to insert. Mom, maybe you should just let go. This situation. If the father decided to leave, it means there are reasons for that. Zinaida Borisovna was outraged by the reasons. What could be the reasons for leaving a family? I have always been the perfect wife, took care of him, ran the house, supported him his image in society. Igor took a deep breath. Mom, caring is when you take things into account the desire of another person, not you decide for him. What do you understand? She waved it off. Zinaida Borisovna. It's all the influence of yours. Wife. She turned me against her at first. You, now father. Olesya has nothing to do with it, he said firmly. Igor. Although, maybe she is true. Showed us both that relationships can be different, equal, respectful, without manipulation. Zinaida Borisovna snorted. Equal. Yes. She's been bossing you around since day one, the mop itself. Igor smiled involuntarily. In fact, I got it from that very mop finally started making my own decisions, and one of them will support you, despite everything that happened, because you my mother, and I love you. He took her hand. But I will not interfere with yours and father's relationship. If he decided to leave, it's his choice, and I respect him. I respect you and your right to fight for yours. Marriage. Or let go. Zinaida Borisovna looked at her for a long time. Son, as if she saw him for the first time. When did you manage to grow up so much, she finally asked quietly. When he became a father, Igor simply answered, and when I realized that happiness is not control over others, but the opportunity to be yourself and allow others to be themselves. He stood up. Think, Mom, maybe, this divorce is not the end, but the beginning of something new for both of you. When Igor left his parents' house, he was not. I am confident that his words reached their target. Zinaida Borisovna remained adamant, promised to fight for her marriage and not allow the family to be destroyed. However, after 2 weeks something happened unexpected. Zinaida Borisovna called and invited them all for dinner, Igor, Olesya, and little Sophia. What does this mean? She asked cautiously. Olesya, when Igor told her the news. Is this some kind of trap? I don't know, he answered honestly. Mom sounded strange, calmly, without the usual imperiousness. I'm not sure we should go. Olesya shook her head, especially with Sophia, but curiosity and hope for change took over. On the appointed evening they arrived parental home, now Zinaida's home Borisovna. To their surprise, she met them without ordinary pathos, in a simple home dress, with a minimum of makeup, but with carefully styled hair. Come in, she said, trying smile. I cooked dinner. Prepared. This word was especially surprising. And Igor and Olesya. For all the years of family life, Zinaida Borisovna rarely appeared in the kitchen. The cooking was always done by a visiting cook-housekeeper. The dinner turned out to be simple but quite edible. Zinaida Borisovna fussed about, putting I'm going, asking if it's tasty, if I need anything something else. Igor and Olesya exchanged puzzled expressions with glances, not understanding what was happening. Finally, when little Sophia was tired sitting at the table and started to act up, Zinaida Borisovna suggested, maybe I'll show her the game room. I prepared something for my granddaughter. Olesya hesitated. It was wrong to let my daughter be alone with her mother-in-law, it's risky. Who knows what she might do? Talk to the child. But there was something in Zinaida Borisovna's eyes, pleading, almost begging, made her agree. Okay, but I'll go with you. Of course, the mother-in-law hastily agreed. The games room, which previously served as guest bedroom, was completely transformed. Bright wallpaper with images of fairy tales characters, soft carpet, small a crib, shelves with toys and books. Everything indicated that there was preparation. Careful and thoughtful. Here, Zinaida said nervously. Borisovna, watching her granddaughter's reaction. I thought that Sophia needed her own room when you come to visit. The little girl rushed with delight explore new space. Olesya stood there, shocked, not knowing what say. That's very kind of you, she finally said. I've been thinking a lot, in the last week, she said quietly. Zinaida Borisovna, looking at Sophia exploring new toys. About what Igor said about his life, about why Boris decided to leave. She turned to Olesya. I always believe that control is a manifestation worries that if I decide for others, then I make their lives better. And it turned out, that they just leave, she finished softly Olesya for her. Zinaida Borisovna nodded. Boris agreed to my divorce conditions. The house stays with me, the business stays with him. That's all. Civilized, without scandals. She watched as Sophia chose a book. And carries it to Olesya. You know what's weirdest? I feel relief. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. There is no need to control everything anymore, to keep an eye on everyone, to decide everything. This is liberates. Olesya sat down carefully next to her, holding her on my lap, my daughter with a book. Why did you invite us today? She asked directly. Zinaida Borisovna was silent for a moment, picking up words. I wanted to apologize for everything, that it was for the way I behaved at the first meeting, for trying to buy off, for interference in your life. She is deeply sighed, and I wanted to ask for a chance. A chance to be in my granddaughter's life on your terms. Olesya looked at her mother-in-law, not majestic matriarch, but simply an elderly woman who was suddenly left alone in a big house, and for the first time in all years of acquaintance I felt towards her something like sympathy. It's possible, she finally said. But with some rules, any kind, she quickly agreed. Zinaida Borisovna. No manipulation, no attempts to turn Sophia against us, no interference in our parenting decisions, and most importantly respect for both of us. Zinaida Borisovna nodded. I'll try, I really will. There were tears in her eyes. Perhaps, for the first time in many years, these were sincere, non-manipulative emotions. When they returned to the table where he was waiting Igor, Olesya said quietly, I think we can come once a week on Sundays, if you like. Zinaida Borisovna did not answer, but her grateful look said more than anything words. Another 3 years passed. Little Sophia became schoolgirl. She had a younger daughter, little sister Alice. Boris Arkadyevich, who initially lived alone, a year after the divorce, unexpectedly for everyone married a woman of their age, calm, reasonable and respectful personal boundaries. Zinaida Borisovna went through a period deep depression, but then, on advice Igor, I signed up for landscape courses design. An old hobby that she abandoned during the years of family life. Unexpectedly for myself I discovered talent and soon founded a small company specializing on landscaping private plots. Weekly Sunday visits became tradition gradually, with great difficulty. But Zinaida Borisovna learned to be a grandmother, not commander. Her relationship with Olesya never became really warm, but turned into respectful coexistence. The mop, the one that changed the history of their family, over time was replaced with a new one. But Olesya saved the old one and hung it in the hill of their country house where the family moved after Alice was born. Sometimes in moments of rare conflicts one glance to the side was enough. Hills, and Zinaida Borisovna instantly became more accommodating. It became their little family joke. One day, when the children were already asleep, and Igor and Olesya sat on the veranda, watching stars, he said thoughtfully, You know, I sometimes think about that day, when I brought you to meet parents, about how everything could have turned out differently. For example, Olesya asked, pressing herself to his shoulder. For example, if you hadn't taken that mop, or if I took it, but just put it aside, submitted, like everyone before you. Olesya smiled. Then we wouldn't have such a story for grandchildren. How Grandma Olesya beat me up great-grandmother with a mop for what she wanted make her clean the toilets. Igor laughed. Sounds like the beginning of a fairy tale. Maybe that's how it is. Olesya raised a glass of wine. For the fateful mops and courage to follow your heart and the ability to turn conflicts into possibilities, Igor added, clinking glasses with her. They sat in silence, enjoying the silence and closeness. Somewhere in the house children were quietly sleeping, the leaves rustled on the trees. In the grass the cicadas chirped. Life went on with all its difficulties, joys, ups and falls. And at that moment Olesya thought that, maybe true love is not absence of problems, but the ability together with cope with them. Not ideal happiness, but common one's memories are both funny and bitter. Not a fairy tale about a handsome prince, but a true story about a man who grows and changes next to you. As for the notorious mop, maybe sometimes you really need to shake things up, the established order of things, to open the path to something new and better, even if this requires showing character and go against the tide. What are you thinking about? Igor asked. Noticing her dreamy smile. About how sometimes the most ordinary becomes the most important, she replied. Olesya. Who would have thought that a mop would change our whole life? Igor shook his head. You're not a mop. Changed our lives. The mop was just tool. Olesya laughed and kissed her husband. In the end he was right. Mops come and go, but real changes always start with a person's decision. Be yourself, stand up for your boundaries and don't be afraid to go your own way, even if the world says it's impossible. M.